All right, why don't I try?
My name is Mary Buser. I'm a social worker, and I wrote the book Lockdown on Rikers, which is the story of my sojourn from idealistic intern working with women all the way to my position as Assistant Chief of Mental Health in the 500-cell solitary confinement unit. It's quite a story, but before I tell you more about it, I'd like to just do a little sidebar on Rikers Island itself. Rikers is a 415-acre island in the northeast section of New York City's East River. It is situated just at the end of the LaGuardia runways. It can't be seen from the streets or from the roadways. So most people don't even know, most New Yorkers don't even know where Rikers Island is. Rikers Island is a campus, if you will, a barbed wire campus of jails. A total of 10 jails in total, 9 for men, 1 for women. If you've been arrested in one of New York City's 5 boroughs and you cannot make bail, you will likely be held on Rikers Island while you await the resolution of your case. So Rikers is very much a home, if you will, temporary to the poor, for people who cannot make bail. 80% of people on Rikers Island are waiting for the outcome of their cases. So in the legal sense, they are innocent. Innocent until proven guilty. They are there by virtue of not being able to make bail. Very oftentimes that amount is less than $1,000. And in terms of size, when I worked at Rikers, the population was 24,000 inmates. An upstate prison like New York would be 2,000 in total for Attica or another similar prison. So this gives you some idea of the size of Rikers Island. So now if we go back to my internship as a social worker, I, like most social workers, idealistic, very hopeful. When I was assigned to work at Rikers Island with women, I was very excited. I saw the dignity in all human life and the capacity of people for change, and I wanted to be a part of that change. So I embraced this internship. I was very excited about it. Landed there my first day in the women's jail, and obviously you're walking through bars and hallways and it's all very foreign, and I'm excited. But on my very first day, my ideals were challenged somewhat. My supervisor was taking me on a tour of the jail, and one of our stops was what's called the receiving room. And I just remember standing at the door, and everything is keys, as you can imagine, the officer unlocking the door, just this roar that I heard behind the door. When he opened it, I was shocked because inside was a huge space full of what they call bullpens, just bars, cages, packed with women who had just been arrested. They were crying, they were yelling, they were screaming, asking for food, for water, for their mother. It was a very jarring sight for me to see human beings in cages. And at the back of the receiving room, there was a bus idling, women coming in with chains, on a long chain being brought in, which was another jarring sight. So I was kind of taken aback by this. Officers were at a console. This is where the women were brought when they were processed, given medical screenings, and then assigned to housing units in the jail. And what I noticed was that the officers were standing in front of these bullpens counting. They weren't interacting with the women, they were counting. And they were saying, we've got 9 bodies in here, 12 bodies in here. And I just thought, bodies? These are human beings who, by the way, if they could have afforded bail, would be at home right now and not in a bullpen on Rikers Island. We don't even know yet whether they are guilty of whatever they've been charged with. But nonetheless, this was the culture. Then second kind of jar came along, if you will. One of the officers behind the console got out. He was getting angry at the noise level, and he just stood there and he screamed. And I'll be very blunt with you, what he said. He just said, "Shut the fuck up, motherfuckers. You're all nothing but pieces of shit. Just shut the fuck up." And for a moment, there was just dead silence. And I looked at my supervisor and I thought, I know jail is rough, but is this necessary? She said nothing, and when we got out in the hall, I asked her about it. I said, how can these guards be permitted to speak to people like this? And she just sighed, and she said to me, Mary, there's going to be a lot that you're going to see that's going to bother you, but there's nothing we can do about it. We have to keep our focus on our relationships with these women and our mission of helping them. We have to keep our eye on the bigger picture because we're not going to change the culture here. So I thought, okay, I get it. And that's what I set out to do. I started meeting with the women individually and also in groups, and everything that I had hoped for was coming to pass. I connected easily with them. I found that most had drug addiction issues, alcohol issues, and I saw this time in their lives as a time out, maybe to get their bearings, to grow, to adjust, to make changes, so that hopefully when they got out, they would not be coming back. I felt very privileged to be part of their journey, if you will. And when my year was up, I just felt like this was the most important thing that someone could be doing, at least that I could be doing. And I knew that I wanted to come back to Rikers Island, crazy as it may sound, but I knew this was my calling. I continued to find great meaning in my work with these men when I sat down with them individually, when I worked with them in groups. So many of them had chaotic lives on the outside, and I was trying to balance the bad with the good. But the bad, the brutality, the injustice, it was really starting to creep into my sessions, and I was getting, I guess, burnt out. There are no happy stories in jail. So when I was offered a promotion to an assistant unit chief, I accepted it. Little did I know that I was going from the frying pan into the fire. My first assignment was to work at what was called the Mental Health Center. It was a 350-bed unit for the island's most seriously mentally ill inmates. I got a real eye-opener as to what this punishment really is. Basically, on my second day, I was called up to one of the floors in the 5-story, went up in a little elevator, went down a wing. If you can picture it, just steel doors, one after the next, small window, flap on the bottom for food trays to be passed through. And there was just banging, bodies thumping against it. Every single one of those 500 cells was full. Faces were pressed in the windows. They were all young. They were all dark-skinned. Miss, help us, we're dying in here. And I said to myself, okay, Mary, they must have done something, maybe hurt someone, cut someone to warrant this punishment. Walked up on this cell where a psychiatrist and therapist were waiting for me. The door was open. The psychiatrist warned me that there's going to be a lot of blood. Asked me if I was ready. I said, no, I am not. So I stepped in, and there was a man with his back toward me sitting on a cot, very simple cell, a cot, a stainless steel sink, small toilet, and a window with mesh over it, which Rikers has windows, so many solitary units do not. He turned around and he said to me, Miss, please, I've been in this cell now for 3 months. I've got at least 2 more to go. I can't take it. I am going to kill myself. Please, you have to get me out of here, please. They wouldn't do this to a dog. So I talked to him for a few minutes, and then I backed out and I talked to the team. And what I learned was that this type of situation is commonplace. It's every day. That he really was not, I should backtrack. He was covered in blood. Sorry, I left that out. He had been picking at his skin, so it was a very bloody scene that I walked in on. And what I learned was that, again, this is every day. I would walk into cells with people attempting to hang themselves, bashing their heads against the walls, covered in feces. And the mental health department had the authority to issue a temporary reprieve. It almost reminded me of taking a drowning person out of the water till they catch their breath and then throwing them back in. But the criteria for taking someone out had to be that they were actually in danger of dying, that the risk of death was very high. So this became a judgment call, and this became an everyday thing. People wanted to get out of solitary confinement. They would not only threaten suicide, but they would make gestures, many makeshift nooses, agonized faces. And it was our job to go in and determine whether they were, quote, malingering, or if they were in true risk of dying. And that's what I did. I would come out of a cell and talk to our team and try and decide whether this person might die or not. We were under fierce pressure to not let people out because this is the punishment, but we were to be sure that nobody died. And as I stood there with our team, all good people, I was so confused because there was something so badly wrong with this picture in this country, no less, progressive on human rights. My stomach would go in knots before I walked up to make a decision in these cells, and yet as I walked over, I would tell myself this is standard punishment, jails and prisons across the country, that the American flag is flying above, that we have board-certified doctors here, that there must be something wrong with me. And yet, to put a human being in a cell, imagine the size of a parking space, for 23 hours a day, 1 hour out, which most people didn't even take. You have to be shackled, chained, escorted down a hall to stand out and glimpse the sky. That's recreation. And some people could have been put in there for years. The length on one ticket would be 90 days, but they could pile up. And this became a real dilemma for me. I hearkened back to my days as an idealistic intern, and now I'm standing there making essentially life and death decisions. And it occurred to me that all of us were well-meaning, good people who were essentially monitors of human suffering. And I ultimately came to the conclusion that there is simply no place in solitary confinement units for the helping professions. And I have to say that it was my stint in the solitary confinement unit on Rikers Island that was the death knell for my career working on Rikers and in a correctional setting. I don't believe that we belong in there. I believe that we need to abolish solitary confinement and certainly get into alignment with the United Nations, which says anything after 15 days constitutes torture. And I might add that behind those cell doors, I never met Hannibal Lecter. I met broken human beings, primarily with impulse control disorders, most of which, 4 out of 5, were in there for non-violent infractions. So again, solitary confinement is not the place for social workers to be, in my strong view after my experience. Thank you.